With a quorum being present, I now call to order the June 6, 2024 meeting of the Hudson River Park Trust Board of Directors. Please note that this meeting is being shown live via Zoom, and it's also being recorded, and the video will be posted on the Trust website, and a stenographer will provide a transcript of the meeting. The directors have received the agenda materials in advance of this meeting and are free to ask questions or comment at any time on the action items submitted for approval today. Please note, however, questions or comments from the audience will not be entertained at this meeting. I note that the board memos and resolutions on today's agenda have been posted on the Trust website in the link entitled Board Meetings, Bylaws, and Other Materials under Board Agendas and Minutes, and thus are available to the public. There are 4 items on the consent agenda. 1, approval of minutes and ratification of the actions taken at the March 26, 2024 meeting of the Hudson River Park Trust Board of Directors. 2, authorization to amend contract with Operations Inc. for payroll services. 3, ratification and adoption of 2024 investment guidelines. And 4, annual confirmation of the Hudson River Park mission statement and performance measures. Unless anyone has any comments, I will now call for a motion to approve all of the 4 items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
1. You abstain.
The motion is approved. The first corporate action before the board is authorization to enter into the collective bargaining agreement with Local 30 of the International Union of Operating Engineers. Ms. Doyle.
Thank you. Local 30 of the International Union of Operating Engineers has represented full-time year-round employees who perform work in the trust facilities, maintenance, operations, and horticultural units since 2012. Members of the collective bargaining agreement are responsible for maintaining and caring for nearly every aspect of the built park, from lawns, plants, flowers, trees, and shrubs, to pavement, benches, fountains, public restrooms, trash removal, snow removal, and so much more. The members also clean and restore the park after large events, support volunteer activities, including those organized by Hudson River Park Friends, perform other essential roles related to supporting safe boating activities, and maintain specialized sports and play facilities. The work performed by the members and the care they take in supporting the park is integral to Hudson River Park's continued success. I'm happy to say that labor relations under the collective bargaining agreement have been and continue to be amicable and cooperative, with both the trust management and members recognizing the benefits of working together cooperatively as Hudson River Park continues to evolve and expand. The most recent collective bargaining agreement approved by the trust board in May 2019 recently expired on March 31st, 2024, and negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement with Local 30 commenced in December 2023. Trust management bargained in good faith and reached a stipulation of agreement in March 2024 before the end of the recent CBA, but with insufficient time to bring the agreement to the board for formal consideration. The proposed agreement has a 4-year contract term terminating on March 31st, 2028. Based on the important contributions members make to Hudson River Park, including their dedication during the challenging period of the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent recovery, as well as the general impacts of inflation on salaries and the economy nationally and locally over the past few years, Trust Management recommends for FY 2025 that all union staff employed more than 6 months receive a $2,000 increase to their annual rates as a market adjustment, B, a 3% increase to their adjusted annual rates, and C, a one-time lump sum payment of $2,500 as a ratification bonus not linked to salaries. Over the following 3 years, members would receive an annual increase of 3% in FY 26, 3.5% in FY 27, and 3.5% in FY 28. In addition to wage increases, the contract would provide for increased compensation for snow removal and standby shifts, as well as an increased reimbursement for meals for extended shifts and an increased allowance for suitable footwear. These changes would take effect at the beginning of the agreement. Staff believes that the wage and benefit package is fair given the continuing commitment of the members to the park, current economic conditions, and in comparison with other recent New York State public sector labor agreements. The trust will maintain key provisions of the CBA that were negotiated in 2012, such as a strong management rights clause that gives the trust broad rights to establish policies and procedures, make changes to programming or operations, change employee duties or qualifications, eliminate positions or titles, and increase compensation beyond the increases mandated by the contract, an important tool to have with respect to retaining and attracting union staff. Many other provisions from the CBA with Local 30 on topics such as vacation leave, grievance procedures, health and retirement benefits, and prohibition of strikes also remain the same. The extension of the new term until March 31st, 2028 will help assure stability in labor relations as well as the trust's ability to budget for anticipated labor costs for the next 4 years. Funding for the increased costs associated with the new CBA in the current fiscal year, FY25, was included in the trust's currently approved operating budget. Staff therefore requests board authorization to enter into the collective bargaining agreement with Local 30 of the International Union of Operating Engineers for the period April 1st, 2024 to March 31st, 2028.
Any questions or comments?
I have one very small question. Was the snow removal extra compensation a strong bargaining point?
No, what we agreed though is that, and Rob Rodriguez can correct me if I've got this wrong. If someone is on snow shift, snow shift removal between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., there's an extra compensation for that standby period specifically.
Right.
And you may have said this, but how many employees does this affect?
The head count is 28, but we are down some staff positions, but we are down 6 positions. 6 unfilled. But effectively, you should understand it as 28 employees with respect to the budget.
And are there any other employees who are represented by unions who are not?
No,
Okay,
this is our only
okay.
union. We work very hard. Oh, sorry, Deborah.
I was just gonna say, having said it, an audit finance committee discussion on this, and just kudos to you to getting to this point. I'm on other boards where the discussions do not end this way, and I think this is a great moment for the trust and sort of the workers that we have under unemployment and union contracts. So I look forward to voting for this.
Thank you for that. I think that I was about to say that we have worked very hard since the inception of the agreement in 2012 to maintain the sense that we are one park family. And I think that during the negotiations, we worked hard to maintain that sense of respect for everybody. And I'd like to give, our group that represented the management, Rob Rodriguez, Claudine McDade, and Ken Jimenez, or our key people at the table. Oh, and I'm sorry, and Nicole Katina, of course. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? If not, I will call for a motion to authorize the trust to enter into the collective bargaining agreement with Local 30 of the International Union of Operating Engineers. It covers the period April 1st, 2024 through March 31st, 2028. Motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is approved. The second corporate action item before the board is authorization to contract with AKRF Inc. for environmental consulting services related to the Gansevoort Habitat Enhancement Monitoring Project.
Thank you. In 2022, the trust installed 300 reef balls and gabions seeded with oyster spat north of the new Gansevoort Peninsula salt marsh. The submerged enhancement structures were designed to provide varied habitat options for diverse species, inclusive of hard substrate for encrusting organisms like oysters. Through the support of United States Senators Schumer and Gillibrand and Congressman Nadler, the trust has received a federal appropriation of $750,000 from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to support 4 years of research measuring the effects of the enhancement structures, health of the salt marsh, and the change over time in estuarine communities and conditions at this location. The trust requires an environmental consulting firm to support this effort. In March 2021, and following a public procurement process, the board approved a list of 10 on-call environmental consulting firms and authorized the trust to enter into contracts with any of the approved firms for terms of up to 5 years on an as-needed basis, subject to the board subsequently approving any individual contract exceeding $200,000. On February 16th, 2024, staff sent a request for quotes to the desired research and monitoring scope of work to all 10 firms and received 2 very impressive proposals in response. Based on the review of the proposals and follow-up interviews, trust staff recommends contracting with AKRF Inc. for the work, as its proposed pricing, team composition inclusive of sub-consultants from relevant academic and research institutions, and experience with similar projects would provide the best value for the trust. Trust staff therefore seeks board approval to contract with AKRF Inc. for environmental consulting services for the Gansevoort Habitat Enhancement Monitoring Project for a period of up to 4 years in a contract amount not to exceed $750,000. Funding for this contract is available from the NOAA appropriation.
Questions or comments?
Works their way. No.
With that, I will call for a motion to authorize the trust to contract with AKRF Inc. for environmental consulting services related to the Gansevoort Habitat Enhancement Monitoring Project.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is approved. The third and final corporate action item before the board is authorization to amend the contract with field operations for design and related consultant services for Gansevoort Peninsula.
At the January 2019 meeting, the board authorized the trust to enter into a contract with field operations for design and related consulting services for Gansevoort Peninsula. After working with the trust on a highly successful community engagement process for the Gansevoort Peninsula, field operations completed design in January 2021, and construction began shortly thereafter. Subsequently, the board approved amendments to the field operations contract at the October 2020 and March 2023 meetings, such that the total board authorization amount currently is $6,355,000, inclusive of construction administration services. As you know, the majority of the Gansevoort Peninsula opened to the public last fall with some final weather-dependent items, such as dog run painting, completed this spring. The park restroom/maintenance building is now complete except for small punch list items, and receipt of the certificate of occupancy from the New York City Department of Buildings is expected shortly. The protracted schedule for completion and subsequent monitoring of these elements results in the trust need to further supplement the amount of field operations contract while also increasing its duration. Staff therefore requests board authorization to amend the contract with field operations for Gansevoort Peninsula design and related consultant services to add an additional $80,000 for a total board authorization amount of up to $6,435,000, and to extend the contract term by 6 months through November 14th, 2024, to provide sufficient time for field operations to complete its construction administration responsibilities. Funding for this amendment is available from funds provided by the City of New York and restricted funds held by the trust.
Questions? Comments?
We last amended this in October, you said, 2023?
Yes. I'm sorry, March 2020.
Oh, okay.
Any more?
Mhm.
If not,
Glad to see it.
I will call for a motion to authorize the trust to amend the contract with field operations for design and related consultant services for Gansevoort Peninsula.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is approved. Thank you. That completes the board action items for approval today. I would now like to ask Ms. Doyle to present the president's report.
With pleasure. Every good New Yorker knows what happens once temperatures start climbing. People get outside. More specifically, they come back to our parks, right, Commissioner? And while there is beauty to be found in these public open spaces all year long, the early and middle days of spring are always among the best, with flowers emerging from the ground, grass becoming greener, and people looking relaxed and happy rather than determined and focused. As you'll see from these pictures I took in April and May while I moved north and south along our Esplanade, Hudson River Park has been exceptionally photogenic all spring. Our landscapes have progressed from early blooming woodland bulbs to daffodils and tulips, and now to allium, roses, and irises. Irrigation systems, drinking fountains, display fountains, and misters have all been reactivated for the season. And as usual, one is hard pressed to find even a small piece of trash in the ground. None of this just happens, and I'd like to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of our operations, facilities, horticulture, and public safety staff, as well as that of Hudson River Park Friends and all the volunteers they enlist for making the park so magical for our guests. Of course, plants and trees are also good for our health and for the environment. We enjoyed meeting State Liquor Authority Chair Lily Fan, who also happens to be one of our park neighbors, when she visited us in April to plant a native tree, Prunus virginiana, or chokeberry, along the Tribeca Boardwalk as part of a statewide effort initiated by Governor Hochul and led by state parks, thank you, Leslie, to plant trees in every county of the state to launch the state's commitment to plant 25 million trees by 2033. Besides Chair Fan, these pictures show Matt Post, Peter Walsh, our newly promoted Assistant Director of Horticulture, and Chrysalis Toredo, who are part of the team that makes sure all our planting events are positive experiences for all of our volunteers. Turning to design and construction, as I mentioned earlier, we believe we are very close to receiving the Department of Building Certificate of Occupancy for the Gansevoort Park building. The fire department inspection is scheduled for mid-June, and assuming all goes well, as we believe it will, we'll be able to open the doors to the new public restrooms and to start using another portion of that building to support park maintenance activities. Recently, J.R. Cruz completed the decorative surface for the 3 Gansevoort dog runs. We also installed some additional safety signage in the beach area and are supplementing lighting along the beach for safety. We flagged several plants for replacement while under warranties, but that planting activity is better done in the fall for plant health purposes. At Pier 97, we opened the lawn today, just in time. Today. Just in time for Blues by the Boardwalk, which is now being postponed, right?
Yes, weather.
But we're continuing to progress the other areas that are not already open, including the overlook and the playground. While the full completion schedule has obviously slipped, it's been great to see people discovering and enjoying the majority of the pier that is open. Nearby work on the new restroom maintenance building is progressing well, with the roof, window frames, wall insulation, and flood barrier system recently completed. Trade contractors continue to install electric, plumbing, and HVAC inside the building, and the contractor is currently installing the signature facade system and framing interior spaces.
That's a great shot. So was the one of the guy lying under the shade,
You could see the
the
puncture,
draft,
yeah.
the dapple.
My a friend who worked with me at the Hudson River Park Conservancy took that in about March. With regard to the park area between 29th to 46th Streets, we have been meeting with Marvell and other members of the design team to orient them to this complicated area of the park. And the team recently completed an initial vehicular traffic count program and visual observations to inform future planning, including tenant and community discussions. The trust expects to introduce the design team at Community Board 4's July 11th meeting, and we'll also be scheduling meetings with tenants and stakeholders in the project area. Before month's end, we'll be attending a public meeting at Community Board 1 to show progress on the design for the estuarium, our future environmental education and research center. Now that the science playground is done and open, it's ever more clear that we have a singular opportunity to foster environmental stewardship at this hugely visible and visited location. As you may remember, we advanced design of this project before having all of the funding in hand for construction. Our hope is that having an actual design coupled with a solid cost estimate, inclusive of the tanks and water infrastructure needed for the fish exhibits, will lead to a successful path for securing the balance of the funding needed for this important project. Currently, we think we need funding in the neighborhood of $15 million beyond what we currently have committed in order to proceed. On April 18th, the trust received 7 proposals in response to the RFP for Pier 40 Construction Manager Services. Through this procurement, we are using a model that New York City has successfully used for certain projects, in which we will charge the selected consultant not just with performing construction management services, but also with and subcontracting for the construction and select professional services related to our continued efforts to address core infrastructure needs at Pier 40, including the ongoing sprinkler system work, facade repairs, structural repairs, based on the 2023 parking inspection mandated by state and city laws and other on-call projects. We're advancing this model because of the incredible complexity of the moving pieces at this massive pier, such as managing swing spaces in the parking garage and keeping the ball fields and our own operations open. The Trust Selection Committee has completed a first round of interviews with various proposers and is continuing to vet responses, references, and conduct other due diligence. We expect to have a recommendation for the selection for approval by the board at the July 25th meeting. I'll pause for a second in case there's any questions or comments so far. Okay. With regard to our tenant and concessionaire operations, I'm pleased to report that Chelsea Piers and the Trust worked together to successfully secure regulatory approvals for the expanded public walkway on the south side of Pier 59, which you'll remember was one of the commitments made during the lease negotiation process in 2022. Chelsea Piers is now in the process of installing the public walkway improvements on the west side of the premises adjacent to the Hudson River and is securing bids for the in-water construction. In addition, Chelsea Piers satisfied its commitment to install a city bike docking station, and it's great to see it in use as we all expected. A mile and a half north, the Intrepid also completed a long-planned project and lease commitment. Removal of the structure known as the chiller plant and reconstruction of the associated section of the pier and pier deck. That area is now open to the public as 4,000 new square feet of public open space. To celebrate this occasion, as well as the return of the restored Concorde aircraft to the pier, the Intrepid invited its neighbors and others, including the record-breaking pilots who flew the transatlantic flights when the aircraft was in service, to attend a breakfast celebration on the pier last month. Thank you to Director LeFrancois and several members of Community Board 4 for joining us. I'll also point out that the opening was an occasion for our own Rob Rodriguez to meet New York State's other esteemed Robert Rodriguez. Former New York State Assembly member, former New York State Secretary of State, and recently appointed CEO and President of the Dormitory Authority, which together with our wonderful Congressman Nadler provided funding for the project. Across the park, seasonal concessions are now open for the 2024 season. Visitors can dine or have drinks at Grand Banks, Drift Inn, and the Frying Pan, play mini golf or beach volleyball through Manhattan Youth at Pier 25, or take a swing on the trapeze at Pier 40. Our 4 boathouses at Piers 25, 66, 84, and 96, as well as the Village Community Boathouse at Pier 40 and Historic Vessel Lilac have all opened their doors to public programming too. And of course, our year-round tenants and occupants are in full gear, providing excellent venues and services and entertainment for park patrons at City Vineyard, Chelsea Piers, City Winery, and the Marketplace at Pier 57, Circle Line, and the Intrepid Museum. At Pier 40, our new concessionaire, New York Water Tours, began operating as of May 1st, 2024, subsequent to completion of our procurement process. 4 of the eventual 7 vessels are now docked at Pier 40, and the business already seems to be attracting tourists and other guests for daytime and evening sightseeing and dinner cruise business. The Trust Real Estate and Operations departments are continuously monitoring the effort to ensure all terms of the concession agreement are being met, including monitoring traffic and pedestrian queuing, ensuring that vessels entering the area are not playing music, and creating and staffing wayfinding plans for their guests given the busy location and proximity to the New York State DOT bikeway. We have yet more good news about Pier 57. After winning the trifecta of prestigious historic preservation awards last year, the pier will be receiving the Design Trust for Public Spaces Public Space Private Industry Leadership Award next week in recognition of the transformation of this once maritime industrial site into a location with vibrant indoor and outdoor public open spaces. As we know, this project could only have been achieved in partnership with civic-minded private sector leaders, and it continues to be both uplifting and validating to see the hard work of the trust and our partners at RXR, Google, Jamestown, the James Beard Foundation, and City Winery being recognized. I'll pause again for a second. Okay. As I previously advised the board, bills to amend the Hudson River Park Act to allow for additional commercial uses at Pier 76 have been introduced and are pending before the state legislature. We appreciate the bill's sponsors, Senator Hoylman and Assemblymember Simone, for their leadership in advancing many of the thoughtful recommendations that emerged from the very successful Pier 76 task force and subsequent meetings with Community Board 4. Staff from Senator Hoylman and Assemblymember Simone's offices attended last month's meeting of the Parks Advisory Council to explain the bills and answer questions. If adopted, the amendments would broaden the range of permissible commercial uses at Pier 76 for the portion of the pier that may be used for such uses to include office with height limitations, amusement rides and tourist attractions, floating restaurants, and potential warehouse facilities needed for Blue Highway waterborne transportation, as well as currently permitted uses. The bills include language recommended by Community Board 4 to prohibit commercial or municipal parking garages at Pier 76. The amendments still require that 50% or more of Pier 76 be dedicated to park uses. The bills would also permit a commercial use east of the bulkhead and allow a modification of the current footprint of Pier 76 as long as there is no increase in square footage. Again, ideas supported by Community Board 4 and discussed at the Pier 76 Task Force. As you know, the bills also included language regarding the West 30th Street heliport. The trust did not have an advance notice of this and did not discuss the heliport use at the Pier 76 Task Force meetings or subsequent Community Board 4 Advisory Council or elected officials conversations. As currently drafted, the bills would require the trust to establish a task force that would include representatives from the community board, local elected officials, helicopter experts, the mayor's office, state and city departments of transportation, and both DEC and the New York City Department of Environmental Protection associated with any trust plan to issue an RFP for either a new heliport operator or heliport design. The task force would review any RFP before its release. The bills do not include any mandated dates or deadlines, including related to the existing heliport landing pads located east of the bulkhead. We're obviously monitoring the New York State Legislature's websites, and we'll keep the directors informed of the status of the bills. The session we expect will probably end tomorrow. We will be disappointed if all the good work we in the community did associated with long-term planning for Pier 76 does not advance this session. But we know that there is, as ever, a lot on the docket in Albany and appreciate our elected officials and community members regardless. Every trust department is operating in high gear at present, and the park itself is also in high gear. Leaving Pier 40 on foot, as I do every evening, I feel like I'm entering a human highway of pedestrians and joggers as I zig and zag sometimes in order to make my way east across the highway. We are just that busy. And that's without even taking into consideration all of our terrific programming, not to mention also the activities of our tenants, planning for July 4th and Pride Sunday, and our operational activities on land and in the water. The trust held its annual water safety meeting on April 24th with the goal of bringing together the park's nonprofit and commercial, non-motorized and motorized water-related tenants, and specifically those who touch the water in their day-to-day activities. Also invited and present were ferry operators, New York Waterway and New York City Ferry, New York City DOT Ferry Division, Fire Department Marine Division, and the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. At the trust request, the Gateway Development Commission provided an update on the Hudson Tunnel project, focusing on construction activities within the river that have the potential to affect boaters. Trust staff also addressed the park's safety and security protocols, including spill protocol, vessel safety requirements, and tenant communications. In a similar vein, the Maritime Association of the Port of New York, New Jersey, and Downtown Boathouse launched Boating Safety Month with the Shared Harbor Day on May 4th. Over 50 mariners, commercial and recreational, gathered at Pier 26's Downtown Boathouse, and the event included a seminar on the characteristics of a safe harbor. Separately, trust staff hosted a safe boating table at the Gansevoort Peninsula, also on May 4th. The day featured demonstrations on water kayak safety with the Downtown Boathouse and the Coast Guard. Village Community Boathouse, Manhattan Community Boathouse, and Manhattan Kayak also conducted demonstrations and cabling. The Pier 40 Wet Lab is now open as of this past Saturday, and about 230 people dropped in to say hello to the oyster toadfish, fiddler crabs, American eels, and other creatures on display there. Our River Project staff debuted a new field trip program, Salt Marsh Science, which takes place on the Gansevoort Peninsula and allows students to explore different ecosystems and learn about coastal resiliency. In early May, River Project sponsored a river sweep volunteer activity at Gansevoort in which volunteers helped count and categorize plastic pollution while Gulp, our waste shark, roved along the river gulping floating debris. And as part of the Municipal Art Society's Jane's Walk weekend in May, the Trust hosted its first shoreline stroll of the season, which focused on both the history and ecology of the Gansevoort Peninsula during a walking tour led by Trust staff. One of the park's signature public events is our annual Submerge Marine Science Festival, which we hosted on Pier 84 this year on May 17th and 18th. On Friday, we welcomed more than 30 schools and teacher groups from across New York City, mostly those with Title I designations. The festivities on Saturday were open to the general public and attracted more than 4,000 attendees. Visitors entered and exited the pier through our new Toadfish Arch. And then got to its custom design. And then got to interact with marine wildlife, birds, scientists, and other stewards of our waterways. Together, our public programs and River Project departments brought returning favorites to the festival: horseshoe crabs, toadfishes, ever popular owls, and Captain Nemo, who you saw in the slide before that, among others, through partners like Silent Wings, Borough of Manhattan Community College, Village Community Boathouse, DEC, DEP, and many other organizations. A reimagined stage and added amenities, stilt walkers, ice cream, and many feather flags brought the excitement and further enhanced an incredible event. And I'd like to give a special thanks to Maggie Curtis of our Public Programs Department, as well as dozens of other staff members across the Trust and a team of more than 100 volunteers recruited by friends for their dedication to making this logistically challenging, but very rewarding and mission-centric event happen again this year. Submerge launched our programming season and now it's in full swing. Our first Healthy on Hudson event took place last week on Pier 64 with flow yoga delivered by Tone House and a HIIT class on Pier 97 through our partner Method by Oscar. At Pier 76, we connected with High Rocks, which took advantage of the huge space for a sold-out day of fitness competition. Coming up in June, our Sunset on the Hudson lineup spotlights local queer and BIPOC artists, culminating with Randy Jones, the cowboy from the original Village People, and the Bad Judies on June 28th. We are also developing programming to celebrate Juneteenth, notably the performance by Jimmy Hill and the All-Stars Band, one of Brooklyn's most electrifying and long-running musical ensembles, and the incredible Resistance Revival Chorus as well. We've got so much more in store for people too. Sunset salsa dance classes beginning tonight at Pier 76, we hope. Blues by the Boardwalk beginning soon at Pier 97. Jazz on the Hudson, music performances, catch and release fishing, blues barbecue, unicycle basketball, and circus magic, the Latin night market, to name a few. A complete list of events is on our website, and of course, please ask us if you're curious about anything.
Maureen, how was the attendance of the Pier 97 workout class, since it was that's the first sort of program we've had there?
Yeah, what was that one?
I think it was like 35, 40.
Okay,
It was solid.
Yeah.
I will say
for a first.
low for some of ours,
Of
but
course.
for the first one in a new spot.
Good.
And early in the season, they really will build.
Early.
By the time we get to Labor Day, we'll have classes with 250, 300.
Great.
Of course, many of our park tenants also have terrific events and programming scheduled, including Little Island, under its new artistic director, Zach Weinekor, and you can read about him in the New York Times if you've got your digital issue. I think it just came out today and probably comes out in print soon. Little Island will be presenting multiple world premieres this summer across the realms of dance, opera, theater, cultural conversation, and more. The tickets range from free to $25. You'll recall that the trust had requirements regarding affordability as part of the lease. Opening night is tonight with a performance of How Long Blues, a full-length dance from Twyla Tharp, with live music by T-Bone Burnett and David Mansfield. I'm sure I'm not alone and looking forward to the season.
I went Sunday. It's excellent. Excellent. Go. It's for a month. Go. Sold out.
Oh,
So
every
go
night?
if you can. Every night? Yeah.
Yeah, I have
Oh,
a ticket for
sold out.
Friday if anyone needs one. But it's just one.
I'm going to.
Along with other agencies, we've recently received 60% construction drawings from Battery Park City Authority for its resiliency project. As you know, the southern portion of Hudson River Park will be affected by these plans, and these pictures show the general neck of the woods that would be affected. Staff has authorized Battery Park City Authority to seek construction permits from regulatory agencies for an expanded esplanade that would extend into Hudson River Park property. While most of the extension is about 6 feet, Battery Park City hopes to widen the extension in the corner where our two parks meet, shown in the picture there. HRPT staff agrees that this would have potential benefits for public circulation and urban design between our two public park areas, and Battery Park City Authority has committed to work with us on design of this area. Besides the water areas that would be permanently affected if these plans are approved, Battery Park City Authority has identified a need to do temporary but extensive subsurface work in the lawn area of Hudson River Park related to sewage infrastructure. DEP must approve those plans, and so details are not yet fully available. Battery Park City Authority will be updating the community tonight, I think, and at another meeting scheduled later in June. We'll keep the directors informed as we learn more, including when the draft environmental impact statement becomes available for public review. At this point, we do not have a date for the release of the DEIS, and we must still work with Battery Park City Authority on property issues. The options appear to be either obtaining an easement from New York State for use of the Hudson River Park property, or potentially a legislative path that would change our southern boundary. At this point, we think the easement path seems more likely to be preferred, but we'll keep you updated as we continue to engage with Battery Park City on this issue, as well as on designs for our mutual border areas. It goes without saying that HRPT needs to ensure that the eventual plans work for us both, including with respect to public access and bikeway safety considerations, as well as aesthetics. The board's audit committee already knows that our finance department has been very busy providing documents to our outside auditor to complete the annual financial audit for fiscal year 2024. The finance and audit committees met informally on May 14th so that Kim Quinones, the trust CFO, could provide committee members with an overview of GASB 87, GASB 94, and GASB 96 requirements, which will each be reflected in the audit as applicable. You can certainly reach out to Kim if you'd like to know more about this important but rather dry details of the GASB requirements. Sorry?
I think
Yes.
I have a question on the, not on Gatsby.
Oh, on Battery Park City, sure. Okay. Yeah, okay.
But the, how was it determined that that portion of the park needed to have, protection from the water compared to other section of the park? Is that the lowest, or is that?
No, so think of us as being the side effect of the Battery Park City Authority's resiliency project. So in order for them to achieve their resiliency at their northern border, they have to extend into Hudson River Park. And
So that, yeah, that was my question, is that Battery Park, is that one of the most exposed area from the waterfront? Or not?
And just to clarify, I think so Battery Park City is extending its seawall to protect Battery Park City, not Hudson River Park, off its northern side. It enters in, it does not protect the park. And then it goes inland from there.
It protects the battery.
It protects Battery Park
And
City.
again, my point was, if you
Yeah.
were going to look at the whole coast, would you say, I mean, what, one would say that you start by the most affected area. And my question is whether that is the most affected area.
Battery Park City as an independent authority has the funding, it's self-funding its own protection for Battery Park City itself. It is not part of a larger
Relevant.
project looking over at other pieces of Manhattan's coastline. It is only for Battery Park City as a unit.
But there are other projects going along around the city to look at that whole southern tip of Manhattan and piecing together the protection components along there.
And this is Tammy Meltzer of our advisory council, but she also happens to be a Battery Park City resident and Community Board One chair.
So as chair of CB1, I can tell you that the project holistically done by the Battery Park City Authority will go up along a wee bit into Tribeca. And it is designed to protect all of Lower Manhattan from the water that came in at the lowest point, which is the pinch point at Chamber Street. So yes, and to follow up for Noreen, June 20th is where they will, it's gonna be part of my announcements, not nearly as robust or fabulous as anybody's gone before me, but June 20th, they will have a full design and engineering presentation at Stuyvesant. And it'll show you everything they're doing from North Moore south to South Cove. And if you'd like any more information on anything coastal resiliency, I'd be delighted to share that.
Thank you so much.
We can show you some more, plans that,
Yeah, just wanted to have a
Yeah.
look at.
yeah. It's effectively that they have jurisdiction, as Robert said, they have funding, and their configuration is fundamentally different. There aren't this jigsaw puzzle of piers in their area, so it's just a different type of system that they can think about. Back to the audit committee. The audit committee meeting to review the proposed audit with our outside auditors has been scheduled for later this month. Certainly anyone not on the audit committee is welcome to attend, or feel free to ask him or Sikander Zuberi if you have any questions when you receive a copy of the final audit. The audit must be posted on the trust website and filed with the authority's budget office prior to June 30th. The documents the board approved today, including the investment guidelines and mission statement, as well as the documents approved earlier in the year, such as the trust procurement guidelines, must also be provided to the authority's budget office through its Paris website by June 30th. All of these deadlines are another example of why this time of year is so busy for pretty much every department at the trust. On that note, it's all hands on deck at our office as we plan for both the large crowds that will be drawn to the park first on Pride Sunday, and then 4 days later for the Macy's July 4th fireworks display, now scheduled to be staged from the Hudson River. The decision to shift the fireworks to the Hudson River in early spring has meant that lead time for planning is very short, with everyone feeling the pressure, and all of this is occupying a great deal of senior staff time. We've been working very closely with Macy's, the New York City's Office of Citywide Event Coordination and Management, and NYPD on everything from terms of an occupancy permit with Macy's for its concert and private event, which is separate from the barges from which the fireworks are deployed, that it's actually in the river beyond our boundaries, to technical planning related to logistics and timing of park openings and closings, given safety considerations for visitors. The trust has provided tours of the park to NYPD and city representatives and has facilitated access to park tenants, along with other information to support the city's planning for the July 4th event. I'd like to thank Deputy Mayor Mirazoshi and his staff member Olivia Arno, who's here, for helping to make sure that the trust's unique configuration and needs are very carefully considered during the planning process. Finally, to sort of personal things, the trust recently celebrated the retirement of Kamraj Mangru, our longtime Assistant Director of Maintenance. Prior to becoming a trust staff member, Mangru worked for a social services contractor that managed sanitation and grounds maintenance on Men's State DOT property during the Hudson River Park Conservancy era, and then in the early days of the trust. Mangru dutifully and diligently managed the staff members and contractors responsible for the general cleanliness and care of the parks. He had an amazing memory for dates and never wastes a thing. Thanks to his industriousness and general handiness, the trust was an early adopter of the practice of reducing, reusing, and recycling. We wish him well in retirement, and we thank the board members for your generosity in contributing to his farewell gift. And I'm happy to add that we recently promoted Leikram Bunwal into the position of Assistant Director of Maintenance. Leikram has served in the maintenance department for over 10 years, and like Mangru, he shows his dedication to the park every day. I also want to formally thank our former chair, Basil Segos, for his long service to Hudson River Park and to the state. As you probably know, Basil was the longest tenured commissioner of New York State DEC, holding this incredibly complex job from 2015 through April 2024. During this period, he oversaw programs and policies to protect and restore New York's air, land, and waters, while also fostering New York State's clean energy program. He served as an officer in the U.S. Army Reserve at the same time, was deployed overseas, and took a leave of absence in 2022 to drive ambulances in Ukraine as a volunteer. Basil twice served as the trust board's chair, and he was always available when trust staff needed his guidance, wisdom, and practical approach to addressing complicated issues. His dedication to the waterfront in our park will be missed, and I was glad to be able to say thank you from all of us during his retirement celebration in Albany, where it was abundantly clear from Governor Hochul to everyone at his staff at all levels how much people admired him. We wish him the best in his new position as partner and the senior policy director of the law firm Foley Hoag. And hope we have promised him a golf cart tour when he gets to the park. He's never done it. Hope he gets settled in his new life soon so he can take us up on it. That's the end of my report, if anyone has any further questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. I will now ask Tammy Meltzer to present the advisory council report.
Thank you very much. I am Tammy Meltzer. I'm Chair of Community Board 1, and in my rotation, now Chair of the Hudson River Park Advisory Council. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm neither going to be as lengthy or have great slides like Noreen does, so I'm going to be short and I'll be short and sweet. Okay. So first I want to say thank you very much, Jeffrey, for joining the board. We finally in May did get our appointment from CB4, so we do finally have a full board council. We're working through our membership from May and June, so you will hear updates from me on the next one for our membership list and executive committee. I want to thank the Friends for presenting and spending so much time at the advisory council to talk about not only their programming, but the funding and the partnerships and things like that. That was very educational for a lot of people who didn't really understand the depth and breadth. So I want to say thank you. I announced that we have 2 new co-chairs of our safety committee, Alan Oster and Michael Wiggins, who we hope will do great work looking ahead for in charge of our safety committee. And with that, I look forward to seeing people who are interested in resiliency on June 20th at Stuyvesant. They will review everything that they're doing for all of their resiliency plans from Northmore down through the corner and edge at the water line for the Hudson River Park Trust and how it all connects, because there will be significant changes at the very bottom where the bike lane intersects with the corner of the back of Stuyvesant and all the way through the back. We're excited and hopeful that it all works for actually the best for the trust. So with that, I close my report. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. I will now ask Connie Fishman to present the Hudson River Park Friends report.
Thank you. I missed you at your last meeting because I finally got COVID after 4 years. So I'm happy to be back. Just briefly, we have started our gala fundraising. Our gala will be October 10th in Hudson River Park at Pier 62 and at Chelsea Piers for dinner. We're still looking for our corporate honoree. So if any of the board members have brilliant ideas about companies that really should be supporting Hudson River Park more strongly that are along the west side, Hudson Square, Hudson Yard, Spidey, Meatpacking District, we would love to hear from you. We finished our last fiscal year as you did on March 31st. Our revenue was 5.5 million. That is finally ahead of where we were in 2019 before the pandemic. So I feel like that was, sort of getting over the hump. The recovery is, in my opinion, now complete. We were able to compensate staff for cuts that everybody took, both voluntarily and with a little bit of persuasion during 20 and 21, which allowed us to not lay off anybody during the pandemic, which was great. We had a few people leave voluntarily for other positions, but we retained, I would say, about 80% of our staff, which was great. We are now 16, which for us sounds huge. But, you know, as there's more work, we need more people. The breakdown in that amount of money is roughly a fifth in the individual giving category, a fifth in the corporate giving category, and 3/5 from events, primarily the gala, which is something that we're working on changing. We would like to, over time, become much less dependent on the gala. First, there's just a certain capacity that you can't exceed, and I think a lot of foundations and corporations, and to a certain extent individuals, post-pandemic are going in a different direction with charitable giving, and it's not nearly as easy to raise that money as it was before 2020. And one of the strategies for this, we have sort of targeted, I would say, kind of focus areas that we're trying to develop. So with the development committee, which is a little bit like a junior board, not exactly, we are expanding into sort of specialty subgroups that address people's personal passions that are connected to the park, rather than being more general, just I love Hudson River Park and I want to give it money. These are in arts and culture, in sports and athletics, and in environmental stewardship. And so we are taking what was one committee, splitting it into three. Each one of these now has a chair and a co-chair. It's part of their mission to work with us to develop a plan for how they would like to grow, and they have growth targets. So each one of those committees this year has a target of bringing in 10 more members. Each of these members not only pay their dues, but they also help drive the agenda for those sub areas and recruit new members. And so that is one area. As in addition, the playground committee, which has been a big success in the past, it had a bad pandemic. Obviously, these are people all with small children, and a lot of them either left the city permanently or temporarily, and we went to about 50% of our membership during COVID. We started with 100, we went down a little below 50, we're now back to over 100, and so we have a goal this year of getting 50 more families to be part of the playground committee. They're extremely active and have actually been a feeder for now our third board member, who will be approved next week. So it's a great group. They're very involved. We need to get them when their kids are between the ages of 0 and about 8, because after that, you know, the little kid playground, not the fish though. The big kids are really, you know, still playing at the science playground on the sturgeons, because they're more interesting than a lot of, you know, the smaller children's activities. But it's just a great way for us to get local families involved. And so we're really, you know, sort of interested in cultivating these small committees so that we can get people to participate in the thing that they really are sort of driven by in terms of their love for the park. And then finally, yesterday, we had our annual member celebration in the park. These are mostly our lower level memberships, which are $50 and $100 a year. We have a party for them every year at Drift Inn, and we did it at Drift Inn in Greenwich Village, and roughly 130 attended. And this is a great group, because among these smaller members are actually people who have the capacity to become much more involved, both personally and financially. And so it's a way of cultivating people who otherwise, you know, write a one-time check every year, get a tote bag and a hat, and you don't really see them much. They don't come to galas, they don't join other committees, but at this kind of event, we meet a lot of people that are otherwise sort of hidden gems that you don't find. And that's it. Any questions? Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there any further business?
I'll just announce that we just saw that the Senate bill is now on the Senate floor calendar, so fingers crossed.
If-
Rarely such excitement around legislation.
Let's turn on the TV.
C-SPAN for New York State. If there's no other further business or excitement about legislation, I now request that the directors move into executive session to discuss real estate transaction matters and that we adjourn the public portion of the meeting. The executive session will not include any action items for approval by the directors. May I please have a motion to move into executive session